Welcome to the show, guys. Welcome to the show to all of my members out there. And this is a Sunday show. You guys are going to get an exclusive on it today, but tomorrow I think I'm going to put the show up because this is important information. But you guys are going to get to watch it a day in advance here. This is untenable situation for most of the people in America. The Great Depression. How bad was the Great Depression? Well, it says here at the height of the Great Depression in 1933, 24.9% of the nation's total workforce of back then, it was 12,830,000 people, were unemployed. So 24.9%. That's what was at the height of the Great Depression. Well, what was the difference? How come? Because take a look at this. Just look at this. This is Shadow Stats and their unemployment numbers. Now, what Shadow Stats is doing here is they're working these numbers by the old metric. The old metric was used to find this number right here of 24.9%. That was figured under the old metric. Take a look here at Shadow Stats. It's pretty much exactly the same right now. So the unemployment right now is pretty much exactly the same as it was during the height of the Great Depression. So how come people aren't complaining? How come people aren't out there saying, oh my goodness, the economy's bad? Well, there are a lot of people out there saying that. They're saying the economy's not good right now. Very bad. But it's going on deaf ears a lot because we've been just like the frog that's been slowly boiled. Back during the Great Depression, what happened was they just come off of 10 years of tremendous, everybody making a lot of money. It was called a 10-year period was called the Roaring Twenties. Roaring as in things are going along really good. That's what preceded the Great Depression. People were used to making a lot of money. They were used to moving up in life. Just about everybody was moving up in life. The people that had a one-bedroom apartment were moving into a townhouse or whatever, or they were trying to buy the latest fashions and everything else, and everybody had work, and everybody was doing great during the Roaring Twenties. And then all of a sudden the Great Depression hit, and all of a sudden 25% of them were unemployed. Now, we've moved into the same situation with about 25% being unemployed, but an entirely different situation is because they've slowly moved us into this, and at the same time, they've been gaslighting us on an unprecedented scale, telling us that the economy's great. Everything's great. So it's a totally different situation that happened during the Great Depression. Right during the Great Depression, they were complaining, saying everything's bad. So everybody out there was saying, oh, everything's bad, everything's bad. Now they're saying, hey, everything's good, but the numbers are the same. But why I say this is going to be untenable. At the start of the show, I said it's going to be an untenable situation. Is because of the hockey curve move, what's happening with this whole thing is on an exponential function, and we're now at the hockey stick, or what they call the hockey stick, where it starts to just go straight up in a spike. That is something that's been happening for over 100 years. Our dollar losing value and stuff, and they have to keep printing money that they didn't create. See, it's a Ponzi scheme at its core. And the best way to explain that is ever since the inception of the Fed, they've been working this Ponzi scheme to create the liquidity that's within the system, or the money, what you call money, Federal Reserve notes that are within the system. And how they've been doing it is the whole bond thing. The whole thing of creating money to pay off the debt, new fresh money to pay off the old debt. But see, how all this works is is when they originally create these dollars, there's an interest attached to them, a payment, interest payments attached to them. It's what they call accruing, meaning as time passes, the interest accrues into higher interest, and then you're paying interest on the interest. And after a while, when the interest owed back gets really large and you're paying interest on the interest, which is what the outstanding debt is now, it's a humongous pile of money. It's like $1.4 trillion owed in interest every year. At a certain point, they never created that money to begin with to pay off that interest. This is the whole problem. This is where it's a Ponzi scheme is they are always borrowing money into the future to pay off the old debt. But when they created those dollars originally as the loan, say it was $1,000 that they created as a loan, they said, here, government, take this, use this, right? There was interest owed on that $1,000. They only created the principal. They only created the $1,000. They didn't create that extra money to pay off the interest owed on it. Now, this is accrued like over 100 years, and it's built into this enormous pile of debt now at this point. But that money was never created to pay off that debt, so they have to keep borrowing more in order to pay off the old. And I know this is very, very hard to understand, to get your head around it, to understand it, because it's such a screwball system. It's stupidity, absolute stupidity. But now we've hit that point where the owed interest is growing so fast, and it's only going to grow exponentially faster, that they have no place to turn now. Because if they try to rein this in at this point, the whole system will collapse completely and utterly, collapse to the ground. They can't let that happen. And so there's only one way out at this point. The way out is to press forward. But what does that mean? That means exactly what's happening right now. They're pressing forward. They're starting to press forward again. They're not trying to go backwards. Going backwards is when you try to taper a Ponzi scheme. And that's what they've been trying to do for like the last year or so. By raising interest rates and doing quantitative tightening. They've been trying to taper this thing. And what they're doing now is they've taken it right to the edge where the whole thing's going to collapse. Now, it's going to collapse. It would collapse. But the way out is to go back to their normal thing of low interest rates, maybe even negative. See, we had zero interest rate policy, or ZIRP. Now we might have NIRP, which is negative interest rate policy. Because they've got us in this situation, they've got us cornered to where they're going to do anything to help protect the markets now at this point in time. And so, why I say this is untenable, this depression that's coming, is because we're already right now, at 1930 levels, say 1933 levels, of, in other words, the Great Depression. We're already there. When this thing cracks, it's going to be on a magnitude greater than the Great Depression. Magnitudes greater. There's a lot of things people don't know about the Great Depression. Did you know that crimes like house invasions and things like that were off the charts during the Great Depression? Because there's a new form of criminal starts to come out. That, how do I explain this to you guys? And it's dire. You have your typical criminal element. Always in a society, you have a typical criminal element. It's a small group of people that are what they, here in Canada, they call it known to police. In other words, police know them by name. And that guy down there, he's a crook, whatever, right? But that's the criminal element, what they call a criminal element. But these people are a certain type of people that are the ordinary, normal criminal element that ordinarily exists in normal times. These are a certain class of people, right? Now, the problem is when everybody loses their jobs, Right now, maybe they got 2 kids. Okay? Maybe it's a husband and wife. They've got a nice apartment they're renting. They got a nice new car they're driving. They both got work. They both got jobs right now. And they're supporting these kids, and they're doing their best in life. And they're not what you'd call a criminal element. Maybe they exist in America right now. I'm just making them up. But there's probably people, and lots of them, that exist just like that. Fit that situation perfectly, right? Picture when both the husband and the wife lose their jobs. Because this crisis hits. This next Great Depression, the greatest depression of all time. And there's no hope for them to find another job. Unemployment and everything else runs out. A situation's going to hit them. It's never hit them before. Not only do they not want to be homeless, but they would do anything to feed those kids that they got. And what can happen in a situation like that if you quite literally have a country that turns downwards rather quickly and an awful lot of people lose their jobs suddenly? What happens in a situation like that is you get that same situation I just talked about occurring in here, there, and everywhere. And those people oftentimes will turn to other means to make that food that they need for those children. They will do it. No matter what it is. And it might be crime. But they're a different type of criminal than the normal criminal element. They're going to be, especially when they group together, the crimes that they do and things are going to be on a different level. Because oftentimes they're much smarter individuals. And they have different motives. Their motives are to feed their children. What's the normal criminal element's motive? Oh, to make enough drugs for the next week or whatever. Totally different motives. But also the numbers and the desperation. And you know, I mean, thinking about this, is the Federal Reserve caused this Great Depression. And it said it's the worst economic disaster in American history. We're already at those levels, according to the charts. Because this was done by the old metric, and this was done by the old metric. The blue line is the one I'm focused on there. That's the one. That's the Shadow Stats Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers by the old metric. And you can see we're right at the 23 or 24% mark right now, exactly where we were in the Great Depression. And where do they have us? By the official, way down here, around 5%. Way down. See what's coming out of my ear there? It's absolutely ridiculous, the difference between the two. What do I believe? I absolutely believe Shadow Stats is given the correct measure by the old measure. And so we're right at where we were during the Great Depression. And I can believe that. You know how there is a lot of crime right now, and there's an awful lot of people out of work and an awful lot of people struggling right now. There's like 20 million Americans right now that are having a lot of trouble. They're in a lot of trouble. But you know, when this thing hits, it'll double the amount of people that are in trouble. And this is why I say it's untenable, because you have a generation here who has lived through 40 years of a splurge, basically, in credit. And what that's done is they feel entitled. And they've never had hard times, ever. So what could they do? Besides just crime, like I talked about. And they would be a different kind of criminal element than what you're used to. Much more clever. Much more devious. Much more planned. Not only that, but there's other aspects to consider here. Take France, for instance. General unrest within the population, they were hitting the French telecom networks with vandalism and days of arson attacks against the nation's railways. Basically, what are they trying to do? These people who are doing this, what are they trying to do? What's their motive? Are they trying to shut down France? It says damage to French telecom infrastructure was reported by officials early Monday, causing local power outages and raising the specter of further national disruption as the country hosts the Olympic Games. Damage carried out overnight in several regions here, it says. Telecom networks. Outages they were having. It shows the telecom workers trying to work on whatever. Take a look at what's happening in England right now, or the United Kingdom. Rioters, says far-right rioters, attack hotel housing asylum. Days of unrest continue in the United Kingdom as its Prime Minister warns that rioters will be brought to justice. So see, what you guys are seeing here is, as the world economy's turning downwards, people are getting more pressure on them. They're looking for ways out. They're looking for people to blame. They're also gathering together, and they're starting to do things that we don't see in normal times. This is already starting to happen. The United Kingdom here, these rioters, he says they will be brought to justice. That means that basically that they're going to treat the symptom, but not the underlying disease. So picture if a guy went to the doctor, and he's got a rash developing on his leg, he's got a rash on his arm, he's got a rash on his other leg, he's got a rash on his back, he's got a rash on his belly. He lays there and the doctor takes a look at all these rashes, and the doctor says, here's some antibiotics, take that, it should fix the rash. Now, next patient, whatever, What the doctor's doing is he's treating the rash with the antibiotics, but he's not looking for the underlying disease that's causing the rash. And that's what is happening when they're sending all these police officers out and stuff. When he says, we're going to bring them to justice, the rioters will be brought to justice. Well, what does that mean? It means that they're going to bring a whole bunch more police in there and try to quell the situation. It's like putting the cream on the rash, the antibiotic cream on the rash. Yeah, the rash might clear up if you put enough cream on it. But it's not curing the underlying disease that's causing these not rashes, but causing this unrest, this general unrest. In fact, the underlying disease that's causing it is spreading to every country on earth, and it's getting much, 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 much worse, and it's not being recognized. They're only treating the symptom. They're not treating the underlying cause. So what do you think's going to happen? Now, I've been saying that this depression that we're entering is going to increase all of this tenfold. And they're already starting to attack infrastructure and everything else in places like France, and lighting garbage bins on fire, hurling stones. What's going to happen when the real economic crisis really starts to impact from inflation? Really big time. Because I'm going to tell you guys what, the Federal Reserve is poised to surrender to inflation now at this point. The handwriting's on the wall. They're going to lose their financial system if they continue tightening. And so now they're poised to start to go in the opposite direction, start to loosen monetary policy. It says the Federal Reserve unfurled the white flag during the July FOMC meeting and set the stage to surrender to inflation. They held rates steady in July, between 5.25 and 5.5%. They're talking about their first cut in September. It says Powell stopped short of calling for a September cut, leaving himself a little wiggle room. But most likely they'll start to cut in September, and they're going to have to cut fast because the economy is pointed down, straight down. And I don't know if that's going to help that much. Cutting these interest rates, even if they cut them fast now at this point, will it turn the economy back up? I don't think so. I think it's going to continue its downward spiral. They'll have to do more, and more yet to change the direction that they've caused. They made the economy go up. See, it doesn't, nothing move, none of this stuff moves in a straight line. There's always lags and delays. So here we go, guys. You've been waiting for the fuse that's going to ignite gold and silver rocket ship to the moon. Well, the fuse is lit now for this. But it's a sad day. I mean, even though you guys have been waiting for gold and silver to go to the moon, this is a sad day because what it's going to entail, if you know what I mean. It's going to entail really, really bad stuff happening. You're not going to like the world. But think about it, though. You know, say you did buy some silver, you know, put it away. And say we move into a very nasty world. But silver goes very high in price. Well, if you hadn't have bought the silver, it would have still been a nasty world. You might as well have it. At least it might smooth things out a little bit more for you than your neighbor who doesn't have any. And, you know, why I say smooth things out is during a hyperinflation, do you have any idea how high the price of metals can go? Because they maintain their equilibrium. They maintain your purchasing power. So say you invest $1,000 in silver. What would $1,000 buy? You know, think about it. Like right now, it'd buy some stuff for $1,000, you know. What will $1,000 buy in a couple years from now or a few years from now after we go through a hyperinflation? It'll buy almost nothing. But that silver will still buy the same amount of stuff as you buy now, no matter what the cost is. Maybe that $1,000 worth of merchandise you buy right now might cost $100 million 2 years from now for the same amount of stuff. Though it means that you'd still be able to buy that same amount of stuff, but you'd have to have millions of dollars to buy it if you didn't have the silver. So it can smooth things out for you a little bit because it maintains its purchasing power. In this kind of environment that they've created for us right now, you're a winner if you can maintain your purchasing power. You don't have to move ahead to win in this, because everybody who's connected to the dollar is going to be such big losers. You got a limited amount of time left, guys. Now that this has happened, we've passed the event horizon now. We just passed it. The other day I was searching for a word on here as far as the Federal Reserve is. They've passed. The word I was looking for was terminal rate. Had a little brain fart yesterday or the day before, and the word I was looking for was the terminal rate. That's way back in the rearview mirror of the terminal rate. They've lost this battle, and this is why they say they're going to have to surrender to inflation. What does that mean now at this point, though? It means we're, for real, we are entering into the front side of a hyperinflation for the American dollar and for all the other fiat currencies that are connected to the American dollar. Because back when they took the dollar off the gold standard, the dollar became the standard for all these other currencies. Dollar goes down, they all go down with it in flames. There's very few things that aren't pegged to the dollar. Gold and silver, real physical gold and silver in your own possession, are not pegged to the dollar. It's unbelievable. Try to put a price tag during a hyperinflation on gold and silver. You can't. It just depends on how severe the hyperinflation is. We all know what can actually happen. I mean, there was billionaires in Zimbabwe who couldn't feed themselves. They were starving. It said starving billionaire. Yeah, a fellow holding up a little poster board with all these $1 trillion bills pasted to it, and he can't buy his dinner. Same thing can happen to the dollar, honest to goodness. And that's why I say, is this a tenable situation? Is this a situation like the Great Depression was tenable? It caused a lot of trouble, it caused a lot of headaches, it caused a lot of misery across the United States, but it was tenable. They were able to make it through it to the other side because they had a sense of civic duty and pride. As far as I see it, this situation's untenable. We got a population that feels entitled. We've got a situation where that population that feels entitled is only maintained through all of this electronic infrastructure that is entering into the front side of a war, and the people themselves can destroy this electronic infrastructure, and the whole thing would just fall into absolute chaos. With then I almost used the word massacre, but for the people, it would just be like, I don't know how else to describe it other than we're not in a situation anymore where the world, the people out here, are not in a situation where they can take care of themselves any longer, or where they have any sort of self-support. They're all supported by the system. Yeah, maybe you work as a nurse, in the hospital or something. You pay for everything. You support you say, well, I support myself. I make the money, I get my paycheck, and then I go down to the grocery store and get the food and bring it home. I support myself. But no, you're not. The truck brought that food to the grocery store. When that grocery store's closed and you're not getting your paycheck anymore because your companies went under because they were connected to some bank that went down, and the whole system becomes unstructured or unmoored, then you can't go to the grocery store. You can't support yourself. And then you find out that the system was actually supporting you, even though you consider that you support yourself. I mean, I can like to consider that I support myself. You get your paycheck, you go out and you buy your food, you buy your stuff, and you support yourself. You like to consider that. But in truth, I am supported by the system too. That's why I'm putting food away. But it's scary because even if you put food away, first off, somebody could come and take it by force from you that didn't put food away for themselves. The second thing is how long is it going to last? Maybe it lasts 6 months. Maybe it lasts a year. Then what are you going to do? Because this situation could go on for longer. This situation is untenable. I know I've been saying that word an awful long time in here on this show, but we're entering into the front side of an untenable situation, and I see it as how do we avoid it happening? I've pictured it in my mind for several years now, almost like a car speeding toward a canyon and the bridge is out and it's going 90 miles an hour. At a certain point, even if you slam on your brakes, you're going to slide over the edge and fall into the canyon. And right now, we've reached terminal velocity on all this. There's going to be an end to all of this. This whole situation where the financial system's ready to collapse. We got diseases threatening us, new diseases that we've never even heard of before, some of them, but we've got the climate threatening us. We've got the war situation and all of it. It's just like a big bundle. It's like if you couldn't dream this stuff up. 5 years ago, I would have never believed. If you had told me all this 5 years ago, I would have never believed. Well, I would have believed this part about the financial system. But all the rest, the war thing, I would have never believed you if you told me that we would be this close to nuclear war 5 years ago. And that we'd have artificial intelligence and all this kind of stuff coming down the pike too. And I never even mentioned that. It's all in a big bag of trouble. It's like a potluck soup of trouble that we have here. And there's just so much of it that I can't see us escaping it for very much longer even. I can't see us getting even another 6 months out of this mess. It's a hot mess and it's going to blow up. That's when it's going to sort itself, when it blows up. When it all manifests itself for real and causes the enormous problems. That's on the other side of that. But how bad's that going to be? I don't know. I can't tell you exactly how bad it's going to be and just exactly how this is going to pan itself out and what it's going to look like on the other side. I can't tell you exactly. But I can tell you, you better be preparing right now. You better be. This is very important. If you want any chance at all, and look, say it happens, say the worst of your nightmares happen. Of course, for me, that would be the nukes falling. Okay? I'm going to tell you what. Say the nukes fall. I very much doubt there would be a nuclear winter. Me. That's my own personal opinion. Don't take that to the bank, but I very much doubt it. That's just a theoretical sort of thing. But it would be a horrible disaster. You know, and living out in the country, you probably... Most of my audience probably are not right in the city centrals. And even if you are in a city central, probably your city wouldn't be targeted unless it's a really major city. And even then it might not be targeted. You'd probably never even see the nuclear bombs. Full-scale nuclear war, probably the nearest bomb might be 75 miles away. And you might not even see it at that distance. Be way down the horizon. If the nearest one's like 75 miles away. But by gosh, you'd feel the effect. Your telecommunications and your power are just gone and they ain't coming back. That's what the effect would be. And you know, if you're in a certain spot, you might see some of the dust in the sky. The sky might cloud up. You better get under cover because probably radioactive fallout going to be coming. But that would clear up after a day or two. And then the sun would be out and everything would look normal. You're going to still want to live. You know, you're not going to want to die. So then at that point, what are you going to do? The worst of your nightmares have come true. They've had their nuclear war and you're still alive. You're going to be saying, Martha, what's for dinner tonight? So you better put something away for yourself. You know, because we always want to live no matter how. And I mean, even if you put a year's worth of food away for yourself, when that food starts to run low, you'd say, why didn't I put 2 years away, for crying out loud? You know? That's the way in life. You give up more people will tend to give up more on this end. So right now, on this end of all this, your human tendency is to shun it, to give up on it, to ignore it. That's human tendency. But on the other side of it, when it occurs, when it happens, and you're looking back in retrospect, you know, then you're not giving up. Then you're like, you want to survive. You will want to survive. And you'll be working hard to survive, and you'll be wishing you did more on this side. You'll be like, why didn't I put a few more cans of beans away? Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I get a few more antibiotics? You know, my kid's sick and I need antibiotics or whatever. It's going to be on your mind after. And then, of course, as years progress, human civilization will reorganize itself again very quickly. It doesn't actually even take years. In fact, reorganizing from something as dire as its all-out nuclear war would begin on day one. Really. It would begin on day one. And of course, a couple years in, and there'd be a whole new structure to the world society. They'd rebuild everything and they'd be going again. And the nuclear war would be in all the history books. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I heard about one fella in Japan. He's a Japanese fella. He had the worst of luck. He was in Hiroshima when they blew off the bomb on Hiroshima, and he survived it. Guess where he went? He went to Nagasaki. And they dropped the second bomb on him. And he survived that. That's what I heard anyway. I don't know if that story's true or not. I think it is true. That unbelievable. What bad luck to go to the second city where they're going to drop a nuke. The only two cities have ever dropped nuclear bombs on, he was in, I guess, both of them at the same time. Not the same time, but like, you know. I heard another story about a guy who was in, I think he was in Nagasaki when they dropped the bomb, and they had him in the lowest, right at ground zero, right where the bomb was falling. He was right there, and he survived it because he was in an underground prison. So he survived it. Anyway, guys, my point is, in all this is after it occurs, you're not going to feel any different. You're still going to want to survive just like you do right now. Except, are you giving yourself the tools that you need in order to survive? Anyway, thank you guys for listening to my show. It's a rough world out there right now. And I do see it getting better. But first, this whole thing has got to play itself out. And I don't think we have long to wait now at this point before it plays itself out and gets to the other side of all this. You know? And we're not the first generation that's went through some awful, horrible stuff. The generation that grew up in around 1910, 1915, and they had to go through the 1914 to the World War I, and then they had to go through the Spanish influenza. That was pretty rough. But we're in just as rough a period, I think, right now. Catch you guys in the next show. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.